At 4:12 in the morning in Miami, a luxury estate had become a stronghold. A husband and wife legal team possessed a ton of drugs and hundreds of guns. 6 years of deep corruption were exposed in just a single night. If you desire the complete facts about this mission, please press like so this report travels further. That is the reason I have earlier declared my plan to place a total blockade on drug syndicates and use the military to destroy their business. I will demand total assistance from nearby nations to break apart the smuggling rings in our area. I will also petition Congress to guarantee that kingpins and traffickers face capital punishment. On December 8, 2025, in North Miami, Florida, intelligence verified a hidden danger before the sun came up. Concealed behind the walls of a prestigious judge's home was a secret base of operations. For years, specialists from the FBI and ICC followed strange trends. Narcotics charges were thrown out, criminals were let go, and kids vanished completely. Every piece of evidence pointed back to a single location. Within those walls, the law was not being upheld but rather used as a weapon. Over 1,000 kilograms of narcotics flowed through the city under judicial cover. Safe houses ran without interference while courtrooms acted as armor for felons. If magistrates could transform justice into a shield for wickedness, how many others remain unseen? Comment the word justice if you agree that no official title should put a person above the rules. In Miami, Florida, a peaceful, wealthy district existed where swaying palms and sea air masked reality. At the terminus of a secluded drive stood the estate of Judge Amina Hassan. She was the esteemed district judge for the county, and her spouse was Judge Ahmed Ali. He was the powerful city judge for South Miami Heights. To the general population, they represented success as immigrants who had risen to power. However, federal officers understood the grim reality. For several months, analysts observed the property's strange behavior. Armed sentries rotated shifts every 8 hours while military sensors guarded the grounds. Trucks arrived during the night carrying concealed loads. Neighbors murmured about cries coming from the underground levels. ICE agents tracked lost Somali youth and drug deliveries to that specific house. Then the ultimate red flag appeared. Another brutal narcotics trial was inexplicably thrown out by Judge Hassan. It was the 614th instance in 6 years. Federal leaders finally understood the actual situation. This structure was not a residence. It was a fortified bunker. At exactly 4:12 a.m., a squad leader quietly gave the command. Get ready for engagement inside the estate. Hired guns were already taking up firing spots, prepared to slay for their employers. The tempest was approaching rapidly. The true offense did not start with firearms. It started years prior within the halls of justice. Comment expose if you think judges need to be held to stricter rules. The following events illustrate how authority transformed into a defense for malice. As investigators looked closer, the facts became undeniable. Judges Amina Hassan and Ahmed Ali were not merely shielding felons. They had constructed a secret kingdom functioning under the city. For 6 years, it ran without a single pause. It started when the couple gained influence in the Somali immigrant diaspora. In public, they acted as protectors of at-risk households and heroes of the law. In private, they were building pacts with Somali gang bosses. These criminals entered the country via illicit paths from Mogadishu, Nairobi, and Djibouti. These factions introduced something much worse than ordinary street theft. They had an immediate link to heroin and fentanyl supply lines from East Africa. Once Hassan and Ali took their seats on the bench, the armor was impenetrable. From within the legal chamber, they provided security no syndicate had ever reached in history. Over 600 criminal matters linked to these gangs were dropped. Violent criminals walked away while drug dealers disappeared from court schedules. Suspects accused of harming children were deleted from the records. The signal was crystal clear to everyone involved. Work for the organization and you became invincible. Then detectives discovered the secondary scheme. It was the one concealed the deepest. 60 kids were verified as trafficked with data suggesting over 100 victims in 6 years. Undocumented youth and runaways were snatched from neglected areas. They were shuffled through 17 safe locations in Little Mogadishu. Then they were sold to rich clients in Miami Beach, Orlando, and further away. Once they entered the system, their names vanished. To maintain power, Hassan and Ali recruited top-tier mercenary squads. These were former African Special Forces soldiers paid strictly in currency. They protected the estate, transported drugs, and eliminated dangers. Every effort at local monitoring failed before it could start. The narcotics channel they managed handled over a ton of heroin and fentanyl yearly. The street value exceeded $350 million. Cargo moved through the ports using fake customs papers secured by legal immunity. By the time the FBI and ICE mapped the organization, one result was certain. This was not a simple crime ring. It was an alternative government led by two judges who thought the law served them. Now their kingdom was moments away from total ruin. At 4:12 a.m., the final directive went out over the comms. All teams move in. FBI tactical units pushed forward from the western wall. ICE Homeland Security groups approached from the southern edge. The house appeared quiet initially with its white stone glowing in the moonlight. However, the agents realized it was an ambush. Behind those barriers stood armed soldiers who were trained and disciplined. They were fiercely devoted to the pair of judges who funded them. The initial shots rang out before the agents reached the yard. A volley of rapid gunfire broke the silence. Muzzle flares lit up the dark night. Projectiles slammed into palm trees and pillars as FBI shields formed a line. An operator yelled that there was contact at the front. Agents shot controlled bursts toward the terrace where two guards fired a heavy weapon. Stun grenades flew up and burst into white light, giving the team a chance. The terrace was secured in moments. But the raid was not finished. A second unit of mercenaries rushed the main door, moving with skill. These were not common thugs. They were veterans from war zones in East Africa hired to protect the empire. Their gear included military night sights, large magazines, and silenced rifles. The battle grew more intense. ICE teams moved to the east windows and broke in with hydraulic gear. Fumes filled the corridor as officers advanced inside. Shots rang out in the marble halls. A guard ran forward shooting wildly, but an FBI agent tackled him instantly. He hit the floor before he could get to the stairs. On the upper level, a third squad of guards attempted to flank the officers. Heat-sensing cameras detected their motion. Within seconds, another unit stopped them in a fierce exchange of bullets. Windows broke, wood splintered, and walls cracked from the force. Outdoors, a final group of gunmen tried to flee toward the water. ICE blocked them using armored trucks to cut off the route. A brief and violent standoff ensued before the men gave up. After 9 minutes and 38 seconds, the shooting stopped. The estate that was once a stronghold was now under federal authority. 11 hired guns were hurt. Some were dead, and the rest were cuffed on the grass. Ambulances pulled up as no federal agents had lost their lives. It was a shocking result considering the weapons they encountered. But inside the home, the agents did not feel triumphant yet. The real struggle was only starting. As FBI teams cleared the first floor, one agent shouted out, "Command, you need to look at this," as we located a door behind the paneling. With that find, the mission went from a fight to a nightmare. Stay tuned and do not skip ahead. What lies under this house is much darker than gunfire. The shooting had ceased, but a heavy quiet filled the mansion. It felt more ominous than the combat itself. Agents walked through the great hall, stepping over shards and dropped guns. They cleared each space with the steady care of experts who expect hidden threats. Then the report came from the east hallway. "Command, we have located something." It was a fake wall situated behind some decorative wood. Agents noticed a thin line that was too straight to be original. A hydraulic tool pushed it open. The partition opened inward like a bank vault, showing a metal stairwell. It was covered in dust and foam insulation. A chilly breeze drafted up from the deep. Nobody said a word. They just descended the steps into the blackness. At the base, a fortified corridor ran for nearly 40 yards. It was lit by twitching industrial bulbs. The atmosphere smelled of chemicals, perspiration, and pure terror. The initial room they breached was massive in size. Metal shelves were packed to the brim with drugs. Blocks of heroin, fentanyl, and meth were piled like building supplies. On the back wall, military guns hung in neat lines. There were AK models, AR rifles, shotguns, and sniper sights. An agent whispered that there was a ton of product and hundreds of guns here. It was a complete arsenal. But the next room was weirder. It contained PCs, printers, laminators, and holographic sheets. It was a full lab for making fake IDs. The judges had created a way to erase kids and criminals alike. Boxes contained photos, fingerprints, and dossiers. It was proof of a structured trafficking ring. Yet the officers sensed something was absent. It was something far worse. Then they arrived at the third entryway. It was bolted from the exterior. When the lock was broken and the door opened, agents froze in place. Some raised their lights, though the reality was obvious even in the dark. Over 60 kids, skinny and barefoot, were huddled on the cement. Some covered their eyes from the bright beams. Others stared without expression as if they were too shocked to move. Their garments hung loosely on their frames. Their wrists bore scars from restraints that were gone. One little boy walked forward with a breaking voice. "Please, are you here to take us to our homes?" A veteran agent with 30 years of service felt a lump in his throat. "Yes," he replied while kneeling. "You are all safe now." Medics ran in holding blankets, water bottles, and stretchers. Some kids wept the moment they felt a kind touch. Others stayed quiet while holding on to each other. ICE recorded every child with care. Their ages ranged from 4 to 16. Many corresponded to missing person files going back years. The gravity of the find weighed heavily on the command group. This was not a standard investigation. It was a moral failure built by those sworn to protect the law. As agents took photos and logged the proof, a single fact rang true. The magistrates had not only cheated the system, they buried innocents under their home. Upstairs, while medics helped the kids, teams secured the complex. FBI tactical squads moved with purpose toward the private wing. This was the section where the judges lived and ruled. For years, Amina Hassan and Ahmed Ali had entered courts in robes. They made decisions that defined lives. Tonight, officers approached their rooms with guns up. Judge Ahmed Ali was located first. He stood in his wood-paneled study wearing his robe. It was as if he was holding onto a rank that could no longer save him. An open computer sat on his desk showing encrypted books and logs. When agents told him to move, he raised his hand slowly. He seemed more resigned than rebellious. His tone was steady and sounded rehearsed. "I serve my people," he stated. An agent answered coldly that he did not anymore. He was placed in cuffs a moment later. Across the corridor, the scene was much less calm. Judge Amina Hassan had locked herself in a panic room. Agents heard ripping paper and the click of a lighter. She was burning the files. Tactical teams broke the door with a ram. As smoke filled the space, Hassan tried to hide a burning box. She screamed that they did not understand and that they were protecting their own. But the evidence in the house proved otherwise. Next to her were radios connected to African and Gulf traffickers. Another desk held codes tracking money from rich American clients. On the wall, a board showed passports of stolen children. Every item disproved her frantic plea. As she was grabbed, her look changed. It was not guilt or fear, but anger that her rule was challenged. "You are ruining stability," she yelled at the commander. "You created slavery," he replied. Both magistrates were marched downstairs. They were made to walk past the teams logging the horrors. They viewed broken doors and crates of drugs marked as proof. They saw the line of children being treated by doctors. Some kids looked at the judges with puzzle. Others turned away out of deep fear. For the first time, Hassan and Ali saw the results of their secret world. Everything was revealed under the harsh tactical lights. Outside, the lawn had become a government base. There were cars, generators, and satellite dishes everywhere. Word of the strike had not hit the news yet. Inside the tent, agents were building a case. It was so massive that no court could dismiss it. The collapse of the judges was fast and total. Their kingdom had fallen in one evening. But for the authorities, the job was not done. The criminal web in Miami had lost its heads. Now every secret partner was trying to run. By dawn, the house was no longer a crime scene. It was the center of a national realization. As the news reached Washington, command understood the meaning. The arrest of Hassan and Ali was not just about one bad home. It revealed a whole illegal economy in the Somali underworld. Now that the bosses were jailed, the web was breaking. It was splintering and becoming very unstable. Within hours, the FBI authorized Operation Clean Wave. It was the biggest immigration and gang sweep in history. The raids started in Little Mogadishu, where safe houses had been ignored. Now, without judicial cover blocking the warrants, agents acted fast. Streets that looked normal yesterday were full of federal cars. Dogs and tactical teams broke down doors quickly. Many suspects gave up in shock. They were stunned that their protection was gone. Others chose to fight from roofs and alleys. They were soon crushed by the massive force. By late morning, agents had taken several storage buildings. Inside, they located shipping logs that matched the judge's files. It proved drug paths went from Mogadishu to Djibouti and Mexico. Finally, they entered the underground of Miami. Another building contained a horrifying find. There were beds, kids' clothes, and transfer papers. It showed that the trafficking went far beyond the mansion. At the docks, ICE stopped smugglers loading crates onto ships. Several tried to pay off officers with gold. They insisted the judges would fix the problem. They did not know their bosses were already in cuffs. All day long, the arrests increased. Lieutenants, runners, smugglers, and forgers were caught. Every part of the chain was found and hit. Buses moved prisoners to jails across the state. By sunset, over 400 people were in custody. Hundreds more were marked for quick deportation. In the next week, the number of illegal Somali nationals linked to the ring grew. ICE booked planes to start mass removals. They focused on dangerous people tied to trafficking. For the first time in years, the city felt quiet. It was not from fear but from the lack of crime. A structure that ruled neighborhoods was gone. Meanwhile, in a downtown jail, Hassan and Ali sat in separate rooms. They were no longer talking with confidence. They were no longer sure of their pull. They once controlled courts and people. Now their names were on a historic charge sheet. It listed conspiracy, trafficking, and crimes against kids. As night fell, the final report came in. Primary targets were caught and the children were safe. Operation Clean Wave did more than break a kingdom. It brought back belief that America can still bring justice. By the time the sun came up, the city had changed. News of the attack moved faster than expected. Leaked photos of the house and the kids filled the internet. Court papers proved what people could barely understand. Two judges had not just misused power. They turned the system into a tool for evil. The public response was instant and loud. Crowds gathered quietly outside the courthouse. Parents held their kids tight. Victims of past rulings stood together. Some held signs demanding justice rather than robes. By noon, the silence became applause as agents arrived. These officers had spent years making the case. Community leaders spoke honestly for the first time. We believed in the system. One man said, "They betrayed us, but today the system fought back." Police across the nation sent messages of support. Lawyers called it a major corruption victory. Groups praised the agents for saving the kids safely. But regular people gave the biggest reaction. Money flowed into victim funds and hotlines rang with tips. People who were once scared finally felt safe. Across the state, judges reviewed old cases. The effects spread far beyond the city. At federal headquarters, there was no party, only focus. Agents knew this would change how power was watched. New teams were formed and audits started. The message was simple to understand. Power without checks would not be allowed. For the team that led the raid, success was not about arrests. It was about earning back trust. They faced soldiers and betrayal and held their ground. This mission proved a basic fact. America's power does not come from money or rank. It comes from the law and those who defend it. Even when the enemy is a judge, justice is not something that happens automatically. It lives only when it is guarded. Tonight, it was definitely guarded. If this report altered your view on power, please share it. If you think no leader should be above the rules, comment justice. If you desire more reports like this, subscribe and stay close. Silence shields rot, but truth with action can fix it.